Hello everyone, welcome to Tabito Stories. This is another episode of Telling Stories, and today our guest is David Corona. He's a wrestling coach, and kind of like he used to be one of the persons that kind of like would take me to wrestling practices to other places, and he has done like so much, not just in wrestling, but also like in the life of young students and young athletes that actually like begin in wrestling. And I wanted to bring him to the show today, so he will be sharing his stories. Welcome.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm kind of a little excited. I barely saw Coach Cruz's podcast, and I recommend everyone go watch. It's a really good one. It was number 20, right? I didn't remember it. Yeah, it was really good. I saw it twice. Yeah, so I mean, I'm excited for this. I like you said, I took you to tournaments and stuff, and Emmanuel too, another Fremont kid. Kids that weren't even on my team, but it was pretty cool. Um, so I just started talking about my wrestling experience. So as far back as I can remember, man, I was like 4 years old, right? And my mom used to put TV on for me, and I would watch WWF back then, right? World Wrestling Federation. My superhero growing up was Hulk Hogan. That was my hero. That was everything for me. Like I remember I saw him lose to Undertaker when I was little, and I cried because like how could he lose? You know, he was like a superhero. I thought it was real. Like I was little. It was awesome for me, and I followed it my whole life. And I never really got into sports. My parents put me in karate. They didn't like it. I mean, boxing. They didn't like it. I was in t-ball. It's like baseball, but they put the ball in a stick and you gotta hit. Like, you're really small. Didn't like it at all. I hated it. I mean, to this day, I don't really watch it. And then when I hit middle school, and then we moved around a lot too. So it was very difficult with my parents, being immigrants, really not knowing anything. And my dad worked since he was like 10 years old, immigrated here, worked his whole life. He didn't know anything about sports. My mom didn't know anything about sports. They didn't know about putting their kids into it. It's going to help them. And my friend said, try this, we'll put you in. Just as long as you're doing good in school, we're okay. And so my brother went to middle school. I mean, I was in middle school. My brother's a year older than me. He went to Bell High School. I was engaged in middle school, Helena Park. And he told me, hey, there's a wrestling team. I just joined it. And I was like, oh, wow, there really is. And, back then I was 180, 5 foot. I was a little ball. And my brother was like, you better start losing weight because it was really hard. I didn't know, but my brother lost every single match. He scored 1 point his entire freshman year because they did a full Nelson on him. I swear. He doesn't mind me telling this, by the way. He doesn't care. But he's also the best statistician Bell has ever had in their history. So my brother told me, you better get in shape. You better start running. You better start working out if you want to do this. And I used to engage. I used to play with my friends, like steel cage matches. We'll like go to climb a fence and we'll like drop each other during PE. And we'll like, do these like fake matches. Like I was so into it. And the cool thing was I would watch techniques on TV. I watched them do like a small package, which later on I found out is an inside cradle where you hook the leg and you put him in. So it was like the same stuff. And so once I started running, started getting in shape. So I dropped down from 180 in 8th grade to 120 in 9th. Wanted to try out. The coach from day one was very negative with me because he thought my brother, because my brother was awful, but I mean he tried, and so I did the mile run, 3 bleachers, joined the team. I did pretty well. I remember my first rookie tournament, I got 3rd place, and then my next JV tournament I got 1st. So then I was like, I'm gonna challenge for varsity, right? I 112s. I dropped down to 112 by the way, just working out wrestling. Right? I dropped from 120 to 112 like that. And I was walking around at 109, so I gotta be underweight. And I remember beat the guy for the varsity spot. I was all excited. I'm like, this guy wasn't that good. I'm gonna win varsity matches as a freshman. And then I went to this Downey Duels tournament. I was in Bosco. I think it was Bosco. I was bottom, right? They took me down like nothing. They're beating me up. And I just like got beat up, teched. I didn't get pinned though. I got teched my first 2 matches. It was a dual tournament, right? Five matches. So that Bosco kid, arm chops me, but like he hits the outside of my arm like hyperextends, it goes in and out. And I'm just like kicking and screaming. I'm like, oh my God. So the coach is like, yeah, he's done. And it hurt real bad. And I remember the next day I went back to school, I had a black eye, I had bruises everywhere. And like my teachers were like, hey, David, are are you, because they were barely starting to call me Corona, right? I'm a freshman. They call me Corona since I was in high school, by the way, even though that's my last name. So I was a freshman. My teachers were like, David, are you okay? Is anything going on at home? Is everything okay with your parents? And I'm like, yeah, why? You have a black eye? Oh, I'm in wrestling. Oh, no, man, you just walked away. They already knew it. Bill has a culture of wrestling. They've been knowing it. So my coach saw me weigh in. I was at 109. And he's like, what the heck? How are you at 109 and you're wrestling at 112? And I was like, I just barely ate. I'm sorry. I know I got to be lower. I barely ate. And he's like, hey, you ate? And I was like, yeah, I barely ate. And it was a day of weigh-ins, right? I didn't know. Being a freshman, you don't know you got to cut weight. And so he's like, you're making 103s. And I'm like, oh. And back then, our guy was pretty good. Jose Parr. He's a really cool guy. I haven't seen him in a couple years, but he's a great guy. He had ring worm all the time. He was just infested with it. So they were like, go down to 103s. So when I went down to 103s and I started winning varsity matches. I was doing great. And then I challenged Parr for the spot. I beat him, but I remember I ripped my ear like I was beating that day. And Parr was still a good friend, but he was really mad because I was a little. I talked a lot of smack when I was a kid, so I deserve smack talking back. But yeah, it was a great freshman year. Sophomore year, I did pretty well, and I mean, it just became something I loved. I loved, to this day, just the struggles, the knowing this guy's ranked at state, but you're gonna go in there and knowing he's probably gonna kick your butt, but you're gonna go in there and fight, and you're gonna go in there to try to win. And it's just that mentality that stuck to me, and I've always talked to people about it, no matter what it is I did in life, whether it was just going to college or even just being in my high school classes. People were sick of me talking about wrestling, but it was going to college, doing my credential classes. I coached soccer. I involved wrestling in that, and now I coach wrestling, and it's always been wrestling for me because it's just been such a great obsession. I just love it.
Yeah, but that's really cool the way how you came into the sport and how you thought I have to be under 109, and then you actually your coach is like, no, you gotta go lower, you gotta go 103.
Yeah.
And then you went 103.
Yeah.
And then you were talking to us about I was involving wrestling into every single conversation and into your life.
Yeah.
Can you give us examples of how did you do that?
Well, I always had that mentality that it's never over until it's over, right? That's something I got from wrestling too, where I got really good at throws. So I remember there was matches I've had my sophomore year. I remember San Dijon. I never forget this. It was great. There's even a little documentary about that guy I beat too, because he comes out of this thing called Junkyard Dogs. The Harvard Westlake coach made that video. He's now the UCLA club coach, and so I remember there was this guy that he was pretty good. He was a big, strong guy. And I beat him out at the end. At the very last second, I turned him, got my medal. There's a guy from North Torrance. He was beating up on me, leg riding. I was a sophomore. Our coach wasn't big on teaching leg riding or defense. It was mostly tough it out, get up. And so I remember the guy put legs in, he power half me. And I was in pain, right? I was stretched out, I'm screaming. And he's like, don't give up. That was his tip. And I was just like, God, I'm in a world of pain. And somehow I wiggled out, grabbed his leg, grabbed his arm, rolled him for Peterson. Didn't even know what a Peterson was at the moment. Pinned the kid. And he was shocked, what just happened? And I'm like, yeah, I won. And so that's that mentality where it's you could be down on your luck. You could, I'm in college and I don't know what, and I'm going in there, you don't know it's just this culture shock, where you're in a community where it's all Latinos, all people you grew up with, and then you go to a university where it's people you've never seen, that speak different, that act different, that dress different, and then you hear their qualifications, where they came from, what they've been, where these tutoring sessions they had, their SAT scores, all these great things, and I'm just like, oh God, I don't belong. And I was like, I better read. Is that how many books have you read? I was like, shit, it's 2 Cliff Notes, and but I always had that mentality of I'm not gonna give up. I've had these guys that were beating up on me in wrestling, about to tech me, and I pin them. So why would I give up here? It's I'm not in pain here. I could work through this. I could do the things I need to do to get things done till the very last second. And that's something that I've had with me. And, I coach soccer. Like I said, I coach soccer. And there's been games. My team was actually really successful. But there has been games where we're losing. And we're probably down 3-0 first half. This was near the end of my career in soccer, where I figured I can't go any further. We're down 3-0 first half, and I'll tell the kids, man, second half, we go in 0-0, you win this one. Because even with wrestling, you don't really ever lose. it's a lot of things. Like I learned this from Jerry Abbas. When I was a camp. I love learning from these people. And he says a lot of it is like your toughness points. Like, all right, today I'm gonna get more points. I'm gonna do a stand up on this guy. He's gonna beat me up, but I'm gonna get one escape. You just got another point. You're gonna work hard and you're gonna get one takedown maybe that match against this guy who's beating you up. That's a point for you. You're getting better and better. It's never just a loss. You're always getting little gains. And I tell this to my athletes. I hear this. I'm going off on a million tangents, but it's like I remember Jerry Evans. Here's a really good quote. Right, you gotta say this one. This is good. I remember they interviewed him for state. He said when his son won state, and they're like, "Why are you really proud of your son? Are you really proud now that he won state?" He's like, "Proud? He's like, I'm not proud of him for winning state. I was proud of him for fighting off his back when he was getting pinned at 10 years old. Then I was proud of him." And I'm like, that's the mentality, right? You just never give up. You never give up on anything. And so that's the thing that, teaching or, if you can't pay your bills or you're out of work, and it's something that I think really has motivated me throughout my life. Like during this COVID thing, right? I was a substitute teacher before landing this job at Bell Gardens. And I was out of work, right? For a while during the beginning of COVID, out of work, but I never gave up hope. I applied, I waited, I thought I could still I talked to everyone, try to really get positions, and they hired me in a bunch of different schools until, I got this one, which I really wanted, so I got to pick. But, it was always that mentality of you're just not going to give up. You're not gonna just lay down and take it, right? So I love that wrestling mentality. I think it's great for anyone. That's why I love the sport. That's why I love coaching it. And every day I'm reminded, there's always a reminder of, like, man, why am I doing this? And then you motivate someone or you do something yourself, and it's just like, that's why. All right, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I love this sport. Yeah, so that's pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool the way how to see like how like everything has kind of worked for you, kind of like like the mindset that you're talking about, like you gotta get off your back, and then when you were telling the story when he was having you, and then you did a beat yourself, and you got him on his back, and then the mindset of like I gotta fight, like I gotta defend myself.
Yeah.
And now you were tapping into like life itself, like paying bills, like COVID-19 coming in, like like really like impacting your life. Like, what were some of the challenges that you saw when COVID-19 came in?
Oh man, well, I've been coaching since I was 18, and I've always every weekend surrounded my life with competition and training kids since I was 18. So when COVID hit and there was nothing, oh man, I swear I was falling like into a depression, just being home, not doing anything. I mean, I was still training my niece. She was coming to lift, and I was lifting too. But we weren't doing any competition, not really doing anything, and it was hurtful. So really, it was just trying to stay focused, trying to and thank goodness too that I got hired at Bell Gardens, so that I was able to do Zooms with the team and show them technique on there, have some communication. Some kids were graduating. Also, I had a connection with them already. I had trained like you. I would take you places. There's some kids from Bell Gardens that one of them went to Vegas with us, a freak show. So he would ask me, like, how can I get better at this? What can I do for lifting with that? So I still stayed, helping kids out during that time, thankfully, through Zoom. And then once things opened, we actually finally at the end had a season. But yeah, during that time, it was difficult. It was difficult trying to stay motivated, trying to keep my mind engaged. Because you're at home and what do? You watch TV, play video games. Like, what are you gonna do, right? You're just everything's closed up. And I could tell, that's when I started teaching, I got hired on kind of late, because I was originally hired in the Valley. So then once I got hired over here, and I did transfer everything over and got my paperwork done with the district, the kids were all doing really poorly in class, and I felt bad for them. So I let them all turn on late work, for sure, because I'm thinking, there's students out there that have worse situations. They probably live like in a 1-bedroom house, probably 2-3 siblings. They do this quarantine thing where a kid gets sick, they tell me quarantine them in a room so nobody else gets sick. But what do you have 1 bedroom? How are you gonna quarantine that kid, right? You have people that live in these like small homes that there's no way you're gonna just separate them, right? No way. So they're all might be in danger. They're all stressed, and then when the adults get stressed, they yell at the kids, and the kids get stressed and yell at each other, and they're always fighting. So you have a lot of stress in homes, and probably depression too. And so it's been tough. So thankfully I was able to help out. Knowing it, going through it myself, I'm like, man, I feel terrible. I could imagine how these kids feel. These kids that this should be their time to be going out there and exploring the world and going to competitions and making friends and socializing. And when they're stuck in that situation, it's terrible. So, I think I was able to go through it because I was able to help others go through it. So that helped me. For me, that's like therapy. I don't know. Helping people is my therapy. Yeah, you know what? That's what I just concluded. I just concluded that with myself. Helping people. Yeah, I just wrote my own conclusions. Helping people is like my therapy, right? It's like, man, I'm gonna go off on another tangent. I answered that question. I'm gonna stop myself before I go off on another tangent.
What you say, like helping people is my therapy. Like, I absolutely agree with what you just said, and kind of like well, everything that you were saying, like helping, like young students, like being, like involved, like you kind of like as a teacher, like thinking about them and being like, there are kids that probably doing work right now, they need some guidance, and you come in and you're actually doing the best that you can, and actually by doing the best that you can, you actually get to see that, like kind of like the change in them, kind of like that, like I see this kid, he wasn't doing good, but now he's doing better, and that's always kind of like a rewarding experience that you're like, now man, I can continue doing this, and that's something that happens in coaching when you come into wrestling or any other sport, and you start building athletes from like the bottom up. Yeah. I know that you're one of those coaches that, like you were saying, you get the kids when they're in middle school, and kind of like like you introduce them into wrestling, and you kind of like take them all the way to high school. You coach them. Okay, like like that's something that's amazing to see a coach coming in and actually doing that, and helping them in their competition.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I love doing it. Yeah. Actually, I coach kids in elementary. That's why I started. We'll talk about that. I started coaching. When I started coaching wrestling, it was with my little cousin. He was in elementary, actually. That's how I started. Because I did soccer, right? My little cousin wanted to play soccer, and he was like, I was like, I can't join the team. I'm really bad. I want to play it. Can you make a team for me? And I worked at elementary school as a TA, and I was like, sure. My neighbor was in the U.S. national team when he was 9. So he was like, hey, just copy our drills and let's make a soccer team. And I made one, and it was awesome. But then he wanted to start wrestling. He saw me wrestle somebody, and he was like, that's really cool. I want to do that. And I was like, really? Really? Oh, I love wrestling. I haven't done it in a while, but you're going to love it. And I was already like 20 and 21 maybe. And so I did this alumni tournament at Bell, right? And I won it. I beat my best friend, Brian, 2-time city champ. I threw everybody actually in that tournament. Right? So it was cool. You have older guys, everyone's all tired. I just throw them. I'm not going to wrestle. I'm not going to wrestle the full 3 rounds. I'm not going to do that. So I remember my little cousin saw that and he was like, oh, I really want to do that stuff. So I started training him. But it was hard on my own at first. You forget stuff. And then, but the good thing was that he was like really naturally good, super, super good. And so he qualified at Kids State. And he ended up placing a couple times. He beat kids that were trained by like Mark Munoz, by Mauricio Mora. Remember him from Titan Mercury, right? And Azevedo. That's how I met them actually, because they all wanted him to join. Back then it was Team Thunder. They're like, join our team. Because I guess they figured, and I see this now. I watch my old videos of me coaching him, and I'm like, what am I saying? Like, oh God, like I don't want to hear myself. It was so horrible. But he was naturally good, doing the right things. So I'm pretty sure they saw him and they're like, wow, this kid's good. This coach is terrible. If I was his coach, he would be so much better. And that's why they invited us. And that's what I did. I took him to these places, found out what they did and whatnot. And then I'm like, wow, this is better training. Now I know better technique. Now I know better stuff. Now I know what to say. And in the beginning, I started off really negative as a coach. I started off very negative, very destructive, I think. I was very pushy on them performing. And thankfully, I've developed out of that. I've seen other coaches, seen better ways, had 100 trials and tribulations, where now I'm like, okay, that's not the right way. In the beginning, I was, and I totally admit that. So my little cousin wrestled, and that's how I started off with him. And he had little friends join. And then, because I coached soccer at the high school also, after that, I coached all the way to the high school, the same group of kids almost. And that's how I met, like, my assistant coach, Seabass. I coached his brother in soccer. And then the little brother, Seabass was like, I'll join wrestling. And I started coaching him in wrestling. I'm like, all right, let's start. And I had a middle school team that I coached on my own, right? I just coached them, took them everywhere. And I did it because I liked it. And I didn't get paid for it. That wasn't my thing. I just really, really enjoyed seeing the development, seeing them get better, seeing them become more social, making friends. that's how we met you, right? Because they started talking to you, and then you with them, and going everywhere together, and then it just became really cool. I love that environment, that like it's like a family almost, right? Like a big extended wrestling family, but between other schools and whatnot. So yeah, so having them do it middle school, my cousin elementary, and then a bunch of the middle school, and a lot of them stopped wrestling, but I still talk to them. It's their personal choice, and some people just don't want to do it, and it's okay. Um, and then going on to the high school, and then knowing those group of kids are around, and now they're adults. Now you're an adult, right? It's weird. Like I still see you as a kid. You're like, if you're like in high school, so you're an adult now. Like how old are you now? Like 20?
I'm 20 right now.
20? There you go. That's 20. Yeah, it's just like, but to me, it's like you're still in high school. Yeah, and so it's awesome seeing that, that development, that growth. And I love it. Now, now that I'm at Bell Gardens, I would love to make a middle school team here. So I just started, but yeah, that's the dream. It's make a middle school, elementary school team, and have it expand. Because I love that stuff, man. Traveling, the only time I travel is because of tournaments. My first time going to Vegas, freak show. I was like my first time ever going to Vegas. Now I'll go with my friends and stuff. Like I with my ex and stuff, but never. But back then it was like travel wrestling. I went to Ohio wrestling. I went to Missouri this past year. Thankfully, because now I have my good salary and stuff. We went to Missouri for Adidas Nationals wrestling. Everything's wrestling related. So it's pretty cool. But I mean, that's what I like.
And I don't know, when you go to these tournaments, like you're taking your kids, and kind of like like you have learned like so much. Like I can see that you have learned so much from coaching. Like when you began coaching, and you can kind of like see the mistakes that you were doing.
Right.
And now that you have been doing it for 8 years, right? How many years have you been doing it?
Coaching in general?
Yeah.
Since I was 18, I'm 33. 15 years.
And coaching wrestling, how long?
Wrestling? My cousin was 8. He's 18, like 10 years almost?
10 years?
Yeah, 9 years.
Yeah, 10 years. You have been coaching wrestling for 10 years. And
The high school? 5.
5.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you want to count like just my cousin. But like a high school team? 5. Seabass has been my first like actual, that group, Seabass Littles and them.
Yeah. Entonces, cuando tú vas a los torneos, like you go to the tournament, digamos de que vas a otro estado, and you have your wrestlers with you, right? You have them with you. Like what is the process behind it? Like, you coach them, like for them to feel comfortable to go out there and compete, to feel like, like this is a big tournament, and we travel all the way to Ohio to wrestle. And kind of like from that, they probably feel nervous, they probably feel like, like they get the chills, and that kind of the pressure is there. They're gonna compete. Like what are you doing to kind of like help them? Like like it's just wrestling.
Yeah. Well, you know what? My development as a coach has for sure excelled a lot recently, especially recently. When I started, I was really mean. The only reference I had for coaching in the beginning was obviously my coach, and he's a good guy and whatnot, because I'm pretty sure he was brought up the same way. But he was really mean. Very heartless. I remember my senior year, my mom tore her ACL, and so I didn't go to practice that day. Right, I missed weight a bunch of time my senior year. He told me to go a little weight class. I struggled. Whatever, I did it for CIF for the team. We won CIF, by the way, but I remember she tore ACL, and I was like, I'm gonna take mom to her appointment this next day. I told him too ahead of time. I went, hey, I'm gonna take her. I'm gonna be at practice, and he's like, you better get your priorities straight. I'm like, I do. It's my mom. Yeah, that's my number one priority. I was like, of course. And so, when I started coaching, I was really mean. I was like pressuring kids. Like my little cousin would be awesome, and then when he get to state, it was like, you better do good. This is everything. This is it. And then he would drop the ball. And then, he would end up barely placing in blood rounds. And, and the kids he would destroy previous did really good. And, even now, that's why he stopped wrestling too. I think I was too hard on him. But even now, like, he beat, like, his one kid, really, really good kid, Max Wilmer. Way back. This is way back, mind you. He has a lot of development and everything that goes after. But there was a lot of really good kids that he would go at it with, that he was close with, or he would actually beat, that ended up, developing way better, because they haven't, and then I started learning from the other people that are coaching them. It's like, man, they have way more patience. They know this is a development process. This is not you have to win it all now. It's all a development. So when I started thinking, like, okay, at what point does it stop becoming development? At what point do you put pressure on? Then I started thinking, never, it's on them. So that's where I started like getting that. It's like, man, nobody wants to lose ever. Do I need to, actually pressure them? It's like the whole point of this isn't even to win, really. And that's what I started changing my philosophy, and I started changing a lot of things, and I think that became a lot better. The whole point of this is for these kids to again, like we said at the beginning, to get these like attributes from wrestling. This I never give up, I work hard, all these little things that we want to get out of wrestling is the real end game, right? Because not everyone's gonna win CIF or place at Masters or go to state or place a state or all these. Not everyone is, and that's okay. The whole point is for us to develop as people, as athletes. And so once I started getting that mentality, I started really making it more like a, hey, we're gonna go and we're gonna make this a cool trip. We're gonna go eat somewhere really nice. So I'm gonna spend a lot of money. That's the only one that hurts. So every time we go, to a trip, it's always like we're gonna eat at one really nice place at least, right? So we go eat somewhere real nice. So they're hyped about that, right? We made weight. We're gonna eat somewhere good. We're gonna eat out. And then the next days, for the actual competition, it's do your best. Anything you do from here on, that's a great thing too. We don't have a lot of pressure in our area. When we think about inner city LA, like let's say like I took Frank to do freestyle state, right? I took Frank, Seabass noodles and stuff. And this is a year before we stayed at your place. Thank you for that, by the way. Never gonna forget that. And by the way, he let us stay free at his place once. That was awesome, right?
Yeah.
But you were in Fresno City. That helped a lot with the cost. So I remember that time, it was like, man, any match you win at Freestyle State is making history because nobody in our area has, right? No one in inner city has ever placed at Freestyle State. And so then, Frank ended up placing. It was like awesome, first time ever. Nobody else has, great. Like if you become a champion, awesome. If you win a match, great. If you score 1 point, great. Like everything from here is positive. Now, obviously everyone's gonna come with a different mentality. Some kids are like, I'm gonna win it. That's great. As long as it comes from them. Because if I'm the one pressuring them, they're not thinking about their motivation or what they need to think about me. And they're not going to be focused on the match. And I never want that. So, like, if they want it, great. If they don't, it's like, hey, man, just do your best.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that mentality where they got to want to do, what's best for them. Like, I also another kid, Josue Angeles. He placed at Greco State. Right, this kid only did Greco during that time. I was thinking, thank goodness we had, Ted Mercury, Coach Eddie, and Coach Jordan, too, showing him some great stuff. And we were practicing a lot of it, too. And yeah, he ended up placing just because he went that mentality of, if I don't win, it's okay. And if I win, it's awesome. So I'm going to go in there and just do the very best I can. And I think that's always the thing, the mentality. Obviously, you want to win. Obviously, the kids want to do good. But I feel when I take that pressure off, when I take that expectation away, it takes that off them. It lets them wrestle more loose. Lets them be more free in there, not so tense and just thinking about winning and losing. And that's actually something that I did get from my coach. That he would always tell us, if you want to do good, don't think about winning and losing. Think performance. Think points. If I'm in this situation, what do I do? Okay, now I'm in this situation. What can I do? Don't think about the end, result. Think about that current situation. What can you do? And so I think that really helps. The kids have a clear mind, and they also know at the end of the day that we're still gonna go out and eat. We're still gonna enjoy the trip.
Yeah.
They're still, going somewhere they've never been to. Last time I went with you, and we went mini golf. Remember? We did mini golf after.
Mini golf.
Yeah, we did mini golf after. With your partner was, what do you call him, RBY? I forgot his name, but he looks like RBY.
Bravo.
That's what we call him. Roman Bravo. Yeah, we call him because that's his name, right? Bravo. So we call him RBY. Yeah.
You're giving some really good points out there. From like coaching to actually competing. Like the pressure. Like the pressure is not you giving it to the athletes, but actually the athletes giving that pressure to themselves and kind of like in themselves, kind of like say like this really matters to me, and kind of like by themselves, like they make that choice that like I want to do better, like I want to win the next match, and then you're saying that like instead of focusing like on winning, you're focusing on like competing. You're focusing on okay, I gotta wrestle this tournament. What are the moves that I'm going to actually be using to actually do good at this tournament? Or I'm gonna wrestle this tournament, like I feel nervous. Like, what do I need to do? What type of music do I need to listen to calm myself down? Or the day before the tournament, you're already on weight. You're like, okay, can I eat something tonight? Because like in wrestling, is that weight is a very important part. And there are kids that actually they don't know how to do that. Like, can you I can see
Yeah,
you.
yeah, I do. I want to talk big about that one. You know what? I think weight cutting, growing up, weight cutting, especially for me, right? I missed weight. I think my senior year was like 5 times, 4 maybe 5. I don't know. It was a lot. My senior year, right? I quit my junior, personal problems with the team and coach and stuff. Me being a kid, not being smart. And then my senior year, the coach let me come back, and he wanted me to cut down at 125 from 150. Right? I did an exercise for a whole year. I think I was pretty fit my junior year. I was running a lot. I was lifting a lot. I was fit. But then once I quit, I stopped everything for a year. I was just, I don't know, in my head. I was ditching classes, being dumb. So when I came back, he was like, we need you at 125. We were returning champ at 130s, which is my best friend still today. I'm going to go to his house next weekend, actually. My homie, Brian Maldonado, 2-time city champ. He was like, you're not going to challenge Brian. In my head, I'm like, I'm not going to challenge Brian. He's going to beat. If I beat him once, he's going to beat me up 3 times. I was like, I'm not going to challenge him. 135 is Mike Lopez. That was his favorite. He's like, I don't want you challenging him. And I was like, all right, cool. Mike's cool. Whatever. And then I was like, he's like 40s, 45s. He's like, it's too heavy for you. It's not even your weight. You're not going to do well. You got to cut 25s. It's like, you're fat, cut down. I'm like, God. So I missed weight the first match. And then I made weight, and then I missed weight, and then I made weight. I mean, I was defeated in January, but I missed weight twice until January. And then from there, I started losing a lot because, I would do it improperly. I would ask the coach, like, what do I do? How do I make the weight? He's like, at night, eat an apple. Run a lot, work out, eat an apple. And, but that exhausts your body, right? You start losing muscle mass. You start, your body starts to break down mentally as a kid. You're hungry, you want to eat, you're growing. And you're not eating, it really gets to your head, so you start binge eating. And I would make weight and binge eat. And it was just really bad for me. So once I hit January, it was really hard for me to compete. I couldn't go past second round. So it's like, why was I big on throws my senior year? Because I was not going to go to third round. I was like, here it goes. I'm going to go for this lateral because I was not going to make it third round. And that's why I didn't win CIF, because the guy from ECR, he figured that out. He's like, man, I'm going to just stay back and wait. Be in the stands, hand fight with this guy, wait it out. He's going to take a bad shot, and then I'm going to just ride him out. And that's exactly how it went. And I knew he knew that, and it didn't work out. It was bad for me, because coaches talk. And his coach he told me that his coach told him how to beat me, and that he already knew because everybody knew I was missing weight all the time. How they know? I don't know. People talk. My coach talked. That's the reality. And yeah, he did it. So it's okay. We all do that. We're like, man, this kid is missing weight all the time for that. So, it happened. I lost him or whatever. So then now that I'm older and I've figured things out, and I found out, like, hey, there's actually healthy ways of doing this. And the best ways that I got this from Bosco. Some parents in Bosco tell me, right? Because right there, they give like a straight diet plan. These guys are on a diet plan. Tell them what to eat per day, per week, like for their weight class and how much they're going to drop out. Like, and then they have like, okay, this many weeks out of your competition, this is what you're going to eat. So it becomes a process where, yeah, if you want to wrestle year round, because a wrestler, and I don't talk about that a little later, or what's a real wrestler, but a real wrestler, year round, it's a lifestyle. And so, obviously you're not going to pig out all the time. You don't want to pig out, but you're going to have days where you do stuff like that. But when you're going to compete, like let's say like we're getting ready for Missouri Nationals, right? Adidas National in Missouri. So I took Louisa Noguera, right? She got first. She beat a girl who got third in Fargo, by the way. Right, Louisa, amazing girl. She's going to Birmingham. Louisa and Catherine both got first. So like to make the weight, it was like, Louisa has her own ways, but with Catherine, and I would try to advise her. Louisa. It was like, okay, you're gonna eat normal like you do. You're gonna work out and stuff. Put in a little bit more work weeks before. But once it reaches like 2 weeks out, we cut carbs. Right? We want to minimize it prior, but 2 weeks out of the weigh-in, cut carbs, and then a week out of weigh-in, you want to start making your portions smaller, and then 2 days prior to weigh-in, you take away sodium, because that way the day of weigh-in and the night before, they dehydrate. Right, they're gonna just not just the day of weigh-ins, you don't drink water, you don't stuff your face with water bottles. You're not gonna dehydrate in the sense that you're gonna spit and do all these like extra things to try to lose 10 pounds of water in one day, because that's gonna kill you. It's gonna shut down your system, and so I learned where it's gotta be a process. You want to stay within that weight, and then you cut out certain foods prior to. High school wise, right? High school wrestling wise, not club, going to Missouri, but high school wrestling wise, you're gonna weigh in frequently throughout the year. I don't make my guys cut weight. Like, and this, from Noodles and Seabass and Frank, they didn't cut weight. They walked around at their weight class. They were just healthy there, And I figured, like, man, these guys are gonna last longer during season and do better that way. Because if you're gonna cut for state ranking tournaments, and you're gonna cut for state qualifying tournaments. You are not gonna cut for the duel, against the school across the street. You're not gonna cut to wrestle like Huntington Park or something, right? It's like you're gonna end up hurting yourself cutting throughout the year because your body's gonna break down, and kid mentally is not gonna want to be able to do all that all the time. Especially kids who you have a kid from let's say like Bosco, right? You have a kid from Bosco who's probably done this their whole life. Their dad was a wrestler, their grandfather was a wrestler, and it's a lifestyle. They're gonna eat a certain way at home, all of them, and that's a little different from when you have a kid from the inner city whose parents are gonna feed them whatever they have at home, and they're gonna break eventually, like we have parents, because I know this for myself too, where I want to cut weight and my mom's like, hey, we brought burgers. You don't want one? They're really good. They're really good. And you're just seeing that and you're like, so kids are gonna break, right? And this, right? Like at least like the most they can do for us is like, all right, you want to eat healthy? Here's rice, beans, and some chicken, which is good, right? But they're not gonna be like, I'm gonna steam you veggies, or stuff like that. You're not gonna get this stuff. They're not gonna portion your meals. They're gonna think you're doing it the wrong way no matter what. And so, I don't make them cut because it's too difficult to have them do that the whole year. It's not. I don't think it's sustainable, and that's why I don't push for it, because I think most kids stay away from wrestling because of the weight cutting. That's really what kills a lot of kids in the inner city from it, that they don't want to do it. Now, you still want to advise them on how to eat. You still want to give them advice and tell them, hey, you're gonna eat out. Do it once a week when you're off season, right? Do it like once a week. You're gonna eat burgers and stuff. Do it once a week. You're gonna eat fries. It's bad for you, but once a week. You're a kid. You're gonna do this stuff. But I try to stay lenient with it, but I don't want to. I also don't want them to be out of shape. But if they're wrestling you around, they should be okay, right?
And you have some. Out of those points, like they are important, and they're important because you're talking about speeding, like to make weight.
Yeah.
And then like kind of like as you speed, like your body becomes physically weaker.
Yeah.
And then doing everything, cutting weight, and then kind of like you were saying, that's one reason why everyone quits wrestling. Like most of the kids that are in the inner city, because the food that they're eating, like they don't have that choice. They don't have that choice of, okay, like you're saying, that you have this whole meal plan for the week, and you're gonna be eating this. No, it's like this is what you have, this is what you eat, and there is no other choice than that. And then you let them stay in that weight class. You let them like, hey, wrestle this weight class where you're walking around there for the good competition. Then we're gonna come, and then kind of like that makes it so much easier and fun. And easier to learn, because when you're cutting so much weight, it's actually harder to focus on your wrestling, to focus on having fun and doing those things.
When I was at Bell, my first year there, there was this guy, Joe B. I don't know if you remember Joe B. Big kid, right? He's at UCLA now. He's big. And he was 180s. He was 180s his junior year. So when I went over there his senior year, because Fernando had coached him up. Fernando Garcia, back then. Fernando Garcia had coached him up, and he was 80s, and the Bell people were telling me, like, oh, we should put him at 80s, And I'm like, man, right now he's like a 90-something. He's almost 200. He's big. He's not really fat. And plus, the guy at 80s was Birmingham Smith, right? He ended up being second in the state. It's like, do we want to go against this kid? So I'm like, he's strong right now. Let's keep him here. Let's lift. Let's get him bigger for this weight class. And that's when we started doing that. And yeah, man, by the time we hit CIF, Joe was jacked. The kid he loved lifting. He loved, eating well, and he worked out well, and he won a bunch of tournaments, placed high at a bunch of other ones, and he ended up being the first state qualifier for that school in 10 years, right? Just because we're a little bit smarter about the weight cutting and where to put him, and that makes a huge difference. If this kid struggled to make 80s, would he have done the same? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. And so, yeah, I think that's a big deal, that you really want to try to keep the kids where they're comfortable and keep them strong. Like 2 years ago, I was Seabass and Noodles. It was, and even with Frank wanted to drop to 95s, but I was like, it was too hard for him. So he ended up staying at 220s. He lost one prior to Blood Round to Gilroy, but he did awesome. He did number 10 from Vacaville. And the thing was like, okay, let's stay at this weight class, let's go through season, and let's see how you feel. If you start dropping weight naturally, being healthy, working out a little extra, then we'll start, trying to cut a little more, do a little extra. But if it's like you're at that weight, you're healthy, you're doing well, why are you gonna kill yourself more? There's no point to it. Like, is really harming your body gonna make you a better wrestler at the end of the day? Is really pushing yourself in that sense gonna make you a better wrestler? Because if you're a good wrestler, you're gonna wrestle well regardless. It's like when you start feeling that they're way stronger than you, they're way bigger than you, then maybe okay. And then if you have a high body fat, then okay, then we start dropping. But if you're already healthy and you're at that weight, then that's the way you're at. There's no point in killing yourself any further. It's like, I don't know, people have that mentality too. Like, man, if I drop this weight, I'm gonna be a state champion. No, you're not. There's people. You can be a guy drop down and 106, you'll still probably get beat. Like, there's no point in really putting yourself through that if it's not gonna make you a better wrestler. So
Yeah.
that's the way I see it.
And one of the things that I see is you see the long-term game. Long-term game, which
Yeah.
is actually like wrestlers are going to actually last longer in the sport because that's not the main worry. That's not, like you say, like, oh, if I go 106, I'm probably going to be a state champion. And you have that mindset, kind of like as you eradicate that. Now, probably all you're thinking is the state and thinking that the weight is going to make you the state champion. But it's not going to be the weight, it's going to be the technique, it's going to be the time you're actually spending in the movement, not much time you're actually spending on the fundamentals or anything to actually get better.
Exactly. More important, 100% is your positioning, your timing. All that is way more important than your weight cutting. Way more, a million times more. You're gonna have guys that will be smart about it. They're gonna drop a weight class. That are gonna be there healthy, and that's a good thing. But that shouldn't be the main focus ever. That should be an extra thing you do. But yeah, like you said, it's always the work you put in the mat room. The fundamentals, your timing, your positioning, your everything that comes with your technique is a million times more important. And yeah, the long-term game. If you have a freshman and sophomore, that's another big one. Freshman and sophomore, are you gonna make them cut? No, never. Why? A junior, their option. A senior, you want to push them. Hey man, you want to probably like be a little healthier and do this and that to be at this weight class. But yeah, you got to play the long-term game, and you really have to be strategic with the things you suggest to the kids, because some of them could take it the wrong way. Some of them could be like, no, this is too hard, I'm not going to do it. It's bad enough that in our area, it's not really a sport that's promoted. We don't, for somebody to be a wrestler, it's like a different mindset, because you don't get the praise that other sports get. You don't get the recognition, but you put in a lot more work, I feel, than most sports. I'm not going to say all, but I'll say the most. And depending on the room too, depending on the school. But for the most part, you're gonna put in a lot of work. You're not gonna get as much out of it. So why are you gonna put in this situation where this kid's really gonna end up hating it? Because some kids will work. Some kids will be like, all right, push me. I want to work hard. I want to do well. I want to push myself further than I ever thought possible. But when you cut between a kid and his food, and then the parents, especially in our communities, if you tell a kid not to eat, parents in our communities are like, no, you're not doing this anymore. You're not gonna start. I'm not gonna see this. I remember I would go home, I would wake up yellow and green from like cutting weight, because I'll be starving, doing it the wrong way, because I nobody told me how to do it the right way. I didn't know, and so yeah, your parents see you that way. They don't want you doing that. No one wants to see their kids look like that. No one wants to see that.
Another through that, you're talking about the wrestling culture not being big and kind of like LA, the inner city of LA.
Yeah.
Like it's not as big. Like the biggest difference is from wrestling at Fremont High School to going to San Marino with you and wrestling over there, and then moving to Fresno City and wrestling at Fresno City. It's just a culture that is there. Like you were saying, like over here, like wrestling is not big. Like you don't have that prestige. But when you go to these places, that it actually is. It's a lot different. And for me, I hated wrestling in high school. Like I really kind of sometimes I would hate it. I don't know why I'm doing this. But then when I would go to all these places, I was like, San Marino or competing at tournaments or something, going to camps, it changed. And it was like, like Fresno City really changed that mindset in me. Like we have some really great coaches that they show me another aspect of wrestling, which was, like not wrestling, but the technicality and everything that is behind it. And kind of like wrestling, like I wasn't the best guy. I was taking stats. I would ask the coach, like, can I take stats? And they would take me to tournaments, and I would go to tournaments. And in the tournaments, taking stats, I would pay attention to my teammates, and I would pay attention to the way how they wrestle. And kind of like paying attention to the way how they wrestle, I was paying attention to the coaches. I was like, every single one of them, I would pay attention to the technique, everything they were teaching, and I realized that there was so much more into wrestling than the weight cut and the competition, than all of these other things that you have mentioned before. And just going in there, like not being the best guy and taking stats, like I learned so much more. And sometimes like it was frustrating. It was like, but then it's like you're learning something.
Mm-hmm.
And like I got there, and then kind of like my goal was, to kind of like think the lineup. And like you're saying about wake up, when I went over there, with Bravo, that summer of 2019 when you went to actually over there,
Mm-hmm.
we were wrestling and we were practicing, and we did it from January to the end of the competition, which was in December. And I was lifting so much. I got heavy. I went from 130 to 141 that summer. And then I kind of like thinking about high school. I'm like, should I go 125? I'm 141, and I'm big and I'm strong. And then like I made the sacrifice. As soon as I make it, I lost everything. I lost the strength. I lost the condition, and I was beating guys in the first two periods. By the third period, they were beating me, and kind of like that happened. And kind of like you're thinking about it. You have been doing this in high school like for so long, like doing this habit of like I gotta cut, I gotta cut, I gotta cut,
Yeah.
and then you actually change that. Like wait, I should go bigger. So like through the middle of the season, like I went 133. I went 133, and when I moved up to 133, I finally won a college wrestling match at 133. But at 125, I lost every single match. The only one that I won was the first college match at 125, but then at 123, that's when I began winning. And I was like, wait, but why am I cutting? Like, why are you cutting? And then kind of like listening to the coaches and, like not making the lineup and kind of like taking the stats. I began listening to more, I began paying attention to it more. And then like I began looking to the mental aspect of it, to the technicality, to staying relaxed, staying calm, don't overpressure yourself, like, be in the moment. Actually, listening to your partner of wrestling, to your wrestling partner, and kind of like feeling the pace that he is giving you, and then feeling the pace that you're giving him. That's sort of like a chemistry, you have a partner like that.
Yeah.
It's gonna push you, and it's gonna kind of like, like see that, oh, okay, you're overreacting right now. Like you are pushing too much. You gotta relax. You gotta take a break, and you gotta slow down and kind of like go slower. And kind of like like that's it teaches you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, the wake up and like that. Those are things that I think in the inner city, it can be the reason why probably they quit.
Yeah.
I mentioned.
Yeah, and then they don't see the success like you were saying, right? Like they're like, man, making all this cut, I'm not even doing as well as I would like to, right? Like if you're gonna carry yourself like that and not go to state, especially in LA, right, where it's like the champ goes, then it seems like it goes for nothing, and I feel like it's like that for a lot of kids, where they feel like, man, I killed myself this long for nothing, So that's why I think like you're gonna cut, maybe cut your no. Let's get it one. I was like, maybe cut your junior, your senior year if they want, but never pressure. Never pressure, and do it the right way. That's the main thing. Do it the right way. Be healthy, right? Like, see, when I'm saying cut, I mean like, be on a strict diet, not starving, not dehydrating, none of that. At that moment.
From your story and everything, and knowing you, you like coaching, and kind of like you were saying during the break, you like coaching like in soccer. Like you always had like a passion for coaching, for like helping kids and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like before you knew you were going to begin this career, like was something that you didn't know about it? Was something like you wish you would have known before?
Man, that's a loaded question. That's pretty tough. Gosh, I wish Man, that's a lot. You know what? Nah, that one hits hard because there's a lot of moments that I felt was like really tough on kids, and I expected a lot that maybe I shouldn't have. Um, and there's a lot of kids who were going through personal problems that I felt they should have overlooked. And so I think, okay, the biggest thing, if I could pick one, it would be to understand that everyone goes through situations differently in their lives. So me coaching, since I was younger, even when I was a kid, I would help other kids out, around my age, but give them rides, spot them like we were talking about earlier, right? They had like teammates, I would spot them and stuff, and just they're homies of mine, man. Like when my boy Rafa was working, he had it rough, and I would go eat and stuff, and I'll spot him. That's my boy, and even to this day, if I ever see him, like I rarely see him because he's always working, um, but yeah, okay. If I was to think one, it would be that everybody goes through a situation in their life differently. Like I have this meme that I look at, right? It says it has these two dogs. It has one dog that's really tall and a really short one, and they're both equally leveled on the mud they stepped on, right? And they're both white dogs. You can see like the mud like visually. So one dog is really tall, so the mud barely gets up to like his dog elbows. I don't know what they're called for them, but an elbow. I think they're elbows. I don't know. The dog elbow, right?
Yeah.
But it's still an elbow, right? I don't know. It's because anatomy is different for a dog. so, so one of them, the mud goes up to his doggy elbows, and the other one, because he's small, and I love animals, so it goes up to like his neck almost, right? Like his shoulders in mud. And it says how deep is the mud depends on who you ask, because everybody goes through it differently. So I've coached kids that like their parents split, or their mom dips out, their dad dips out, they don't have either, and usually those kids are really dedicated, and I don't know why, but I just really like helping those guys. And I never had that issue, so I can't really empathize, but I do sympathize, because I have cousins like that, I guess. But my parents were always together. I had a good foundation in my family, but I've always felt like I had to help those people. I don't know why. I guess it hits my heart, and so there's kids that it would be difficult for them. Like when they have like situation in their family, and I would be like, nah, you can't miss practice. Nah, you can't miss this camp. I paid a bunch of money for this. You can't miss this. And now it's like, man, like, because I would think about it like, it's not even that bad of a situation. Like this other kid that I knew with that same situation went through it and is not, acting like a big crybaby like you are. And now thinking about it, it's like, man, but everyone's different. It hits everybody a little different, no matter. And I think that goes with any situation, right, in life. It's like everybody deals with it differently at a different point in their life, and so that for me would have been a really good one. Um, Also being a little kinder. I talked to my high school coach when I started coaching. When I started coaching high school, I started coaching at Marquez. I still have a shirt. I love the shirt. It has Seabass on it, right? One of my top wrestlers on. You get to see that. See that in Marquez High School. That's why I started a program there, right, with my drilling partner. This is how your friendships go in wrestling, right? My best friend Brian Maldonado. Me and him started up this program along with this other guy is really cool. He's a homie too, Joseph Padilla. He came on Exatron. I don't know if you've seen this guy. He came on Exatron a couple, I think like a month ago. So the three of us started this program at Lando Marquez, and so I went and go ask my high school coach, because there's things I disagree with him, but he was still a coach and he still got me in wrestling, and he made us tough. He did teach us a lot. Oh, like this guy, what he needs? I think he needs to do something here. All right, so he Buzz. I'm sorry, if you're outside, got practice going on, and so he told me that if there was one thing he could have changed, it would have been to be more forgiving with kids, because you never know what they're going through. Because he was really mean, and he was very like everything about wrestling, everything in your life, and which was good. We needed discipline, we needed to have focus, but there's times where you have to forgive. You have to know that they're just kids and they're gonna make mistakes, and that's something that earlier in my career I wish I could have, because there's some kids that were really good that probably could have gone a little further, but I wasn't so mean and strict. Like, hey, you quit, you never come back. Even though I quit and I came back, or But there's times recently where I let that go. Like remember Frank? He used to wrestle with Frank, and Frank left O'Neill Park. And then his senior year, because we had problems or whatever, he couldn't come back with us when I was at Bell. But I still coached him regardless, right? His senior year, I was at his corner. CIF, I just changed my purple tie from Bell to orange, and I didn't care, because at the end of the day, even though he won for O'Neill Park, even though it said, Puentes on there, was a cool guy, say Puentes. It wasn't about me or Puentes. It was about Frank. right? It was about Frank winning CIF. It was about Frank winning state and doing well. And I coached him as much as I could, and and that's at the end of the day what I really cared about was the kid's gonna get out there and do what they're gonna do, and and Seabass gonna go out there and do what he's gonna do in Noodles or wherever it was, or and that's something that I thankfully learned, but I wish I would have done it earlier. I wish I would have been a little nicer earlier. And another one, here's a big one now that I'm thinking about, just crossed my mind, is there's kids that have talent and kids that aren't born with it but work hard and get there eventually. And I think there's a lot of kids that I would just focus on them because they were really talented when they would come in, and I would be like, this is gonna be my next star. And I was like, big on like, I'm gonna make this kid's gonna be so good. And then the not talented ones were like, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. And earlier on, that was early though, right? That was early in my career, but I really wish I couldn't have been that way. And I learned that with Seabass, who had a really rough start and ended up being really good, compared to how he started his senior year. And I think if I would have been a little more, how would I say it? A little more patient in their process and their progress earlier on, that would have been great. But dude, so are those things that I would wish I could have changed? Yes, but are those things that at the end of the day made me better because I realize it now and it made me a better coach now? Yeah, of course. I think I'm a lot better now because I've realized these things, and I'm very open to criticism. So people tell me, and I learn, and then I learn from other great coaches, right? Like your coach Kisa. I tell you that now that I see like the way he coaches, the way he shows moves, he's like really animated, and I love that stuff. Because it's not just about like, this is how it's done, this is how you're gonna do it, or I go do it. It's like, no man, these are kids. And I remember I saw Kisa at a clinic way back, and he's like really animated when he talks. I don't want to imitate it because you're recording, but I really did it earlier, and it's just doing it makes me laugh. But kids love that. Kids love that stuff, and it helps coach, and it makes it funner, and you know what you're doing. You're doing something really good. So yeah, it's super great. Like there's a bunch of stuff that now as a coach, I wish I would have had that earlier on. That would have been great, but sadly I didn't, and good thing I learned. Good thing that I learned from it.
It's really nice to see the way how these coaches kind of have being sort of an influence to you, and sort of like ways for you to see that like different examples of wrestling and different ways of how the sport. Some people teach the sport like Coach Hisa, like he uses like a voice that is funny for the wrestlers. It's funny for them to sort of like learn and kind of like makes the sport entertaining, and sort of like your experience and how you kind of learn from your mistakes, and kind of like how they kind of like help you like be in the sport and be a better coach, and sort of like how in a huge way they just help you like learn about it, and like if you probably would have learned this earlier, probably they wouldn't have the impact that they have now, because now you kind of like you see that you're like, wait, like I don't want to make that mistake again, like I don't want to be this type of person. And just like in wrestling, we have different ways of how you become better, like the way how you shoot a double leg. First time you probably you do it too far away, and then you keep practicing, you get closer, and then before you realize you're shooting a double leg that's just deep enough, and that's just has the enough explosion for you to kind of take the person down, and kind of like that how like you get better at one move in wrestling, you get better at coaching in one thing, and you become a better mentor for the students, and kind of like moving off there. If you ever happen to see that someone, if someone ever came to you and they will ask you for like an advice, like, how can I be a better mentor, just not in wrestling, probably in any other sport that I want to coach, um, what advice would you give them if they ask you for an advice or things to look for?
To be a better coach, better, gosh, it would be to really try to understand the person you're talking to, because remember we were talking earlier about how there's different coaches like at Fresno State, and how they're all like a little different. I think, and how like some wrestlers will gravitate towards some coaches, and I was talking about that earlier too. How I had like some wrestlers, like I had a kid Chris Urias, Scott, that gravitated towards my one of my assistant coaches, Joseph Padilla, and I think that's because everyone's a little different. So we really gotta try to understand that some kids will react differently to different ways of criticism, to different ways of teaching, and some of them will have different preferences. Now, I mean, overall, what would impact all of them is always being positive. That's a big one. I learned that from one of my friends. I'm not sure who it was. Forget. I I don't know if it was Cruz or somebody, but they were telling me, your coach Cruz, they were telling me that nobody does well with negative comments, negative criticism, right? No study ever shows that anybody's gonna do well with that. It's always gotta be positive. What are they doing right? And what can they adjust? But always in a positive way. And I mean, I don't know why. I've always heard this. I was a TA since I was 18 also. I was always within education and teaching. And all my teaching trainings, they always say this. But I always thought about it teaching wise. I always thought that coaching and teaching were very different. I was always like, with coaching, it's gotta be tough. With wrestling, it's gotta be rough. It's gotta be straightforward. But no, and it kind of applies to everything. That most people are gonna react better with positive criticism than they are with negative. You gotta tell them what they're doing right and what they could adjust instead of you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. This is wrong. This is bad. And I think that's the best advice you can give somebody. And then everything else will fall in. The technique you can learn in videos, you can learn in watching other people. You go to trainings and camps. Motivational speeches you can get later online too. All that stuff you get online. But I think being positive is one of the best things that anybody can do to try to motivate students. Because you can even be a whack coach. Like, let's say you don't know any technique. You wrestled, a couple years in high school and you weren't successful. But as long as you're positive, you're gonna make a positive impact on that athlete. And I think that is because I think at first when I started coaching, like my team would smash on some teams in LA, and I was always thinking like, why are these guys even doing this? Like, you're wasting these kids' time, you're wasting your own time. Like, you're awful, you shouldn't coach. But then I see that like some of these people really make a big impact on these kids, and I mean that's what it is at the end of the day, and that's what I started learning at the end of the day, that it's about the kids and their development and them being happy and them becoming better people. And at the end of the day, that's really the most important thing. So yeah, being positive I think is the biggest focus. And I've seen negative teams, other than myself, I see myself back then, I was like, gosh, I'm one of them. But I've seen other teams where like the coaches like yell at the kids, and like it's like not even their parent yelling at them like that. Like I don't even think their parents yell at them like that, And you have coaches that are yelling at them, being really negative, really pushing on them. And I remember there's just a video on Flow I saw on their page, right, where they're showing like bad examples of coaches. I don't ever seen this thing. It's like, it's funny. Like they're just acting it out. I don't know what tournament they're at, but the guys from Flow Wrestling are acting it out, and they're all like, "Squeeze." Have you seen that one? It's pretty funny. And one of them, the guy's like, "You're embarrassing yourself, but more importantly, you're embarrassing me." And it's like, because it's like that, and that's what it is. Some coaches make it about them, like you lost there, and that makes me look bad. And it's like, fool, no one cares about you. It's about the kid, So I think that's a really big giveaway. It's like, man, just be positive with them, and at the end, everything else can fall in. And if you want to be successful in the technical era, and realm, or whatever, you want to be technically good, and you want a kid to be successful competitive wise, then that's different stuff. But I think the main thing is just being positive and building up a good positive athlete. And then of course, you want to learn technique, you want to learn all this. Always build, always develop. Don't think that you know everything, because you don't, and you could always learn from other people. I've learned so much from listening to Mark Munoz. The one that I idolized, we met him at Titan Mercury, Mauricio Mora. I was talking to you about that earlier. I feel like Mauricio Mora cannot break a plate. Like, this guy is just a saint. And I every time I see him, I'm so happy to see this guy. I learn just by listening to him once. I learn every time I talk to him. I try to learn something. The last time I talked to him, he talked to me about his son at state, and it was just great stuff all the time with this guy. And so it's for sure. Always learn from other people, good and bad. Mostly good, I hope. But you'll learn things from other people as well.
Basically, keep an open mind and always look out to learn from someone. And if you really admire someone, like, look at that person and see what you can learn from that person. That could be sort of an inspiration to you. We're coming to the conclusion of the video stories. We're coming to conclude the show. And kind of like in the show, we always have this question, and the question is, like, based on your experience coaching, wrestling, and being a teacher, what does art mean to you?
What does art mean to me? Oh man, you know what? I was thinking about this when I saw the cruise video. So, but I just went off on a tangent myself. I always do. I just go off on these tangents. I think I'm ADHD or something. But man, what is art? How does wrestling translate to art? Or how does art mean to me? So art to me is an expression of yourself that's always changing. I think to me, wrestling is art. I think to me, coaching is art. There are these things that are constantly developing, changing, and are an expression of who we are. I think that the person's style in wrestling or coaching, anything they do, is an expression of the person that they are. You're a reserved person. Sometimes it translates to a reserved wrestler that's very strategic, or sometimes it's the complete opposite. That person really comes out when they wrestle and they're very explosive, very, because they're so reserved. But for sure, that wrestling art, right, I'm putting it together, is an expression of that person, or at least who they feel they really are. It's totally an expression of themselves. So that's what it means to me. Did I have time to think about this prior? Yes, I did. But hey, I developed this, it was like a little 10-minute process when I was thinking about it. And I was like, for sure, that's what it means to me. That it's an expression of yourself that's always changing, right? It's always developing, but it's an expression of that person that you are at that moment, right?
And it has been the conclusion of Tarita Stories. It has been a pleasure to have the show, to share your story, and for you to be part of Tarita Stories.
Great having you here. Whenever you want to come by BG, Bill Gardens High School. I'm coaching here now. You're always more than welcome to. You are.
Before we conclude the show, where can our listeners find you?
Oh, well, now Bell Gardens. Bell Gardens is my home. Hope I retire here. This is, it's a great place. Administration is super supportive. Teachers here are awesome. The kids are great. It's a good area. I love it. It's not the best, most affluent area, but that's what I love. Is where I kind of grew up in. So you can find me here, Bell Gardens High School, in my little wrestling office. I know we don't have much. I just started here this year, but we will have I barely ordered this year's team picture. I'm gonna have them in the back. Get some nice stuff in here. Have it nice and decorated for next time. Hopefully we can do a podcast in the future. Right here, all decorated up. But definitely, Bell Gardens High School. I'll have a kids team later, hopefully as well.